Welcome. This is May 21st, 2025. My guest is Barbara Lamb. She's on for a second time. Barbara's a longtime psychotherapist, having been licensed in 1976 and a highly trained hypnotherapist and regression therapist since 1984. In 1991, she began regressing people to the details of their extraterrestrial encounters and has regressed well over 3,000 people to those and to other paranormal experiences. So today, Barbara will speak about a newly focused on aspect of the ET phenomenon, walk-ins, starseeds, and hybrids. So this is a focus of her most recent book, last year co-authored with Sheila Seppi, called Cosmic Convergence, Journeys of Walk-ins, Starseeds, and Hybrids, which is linked below, along with her website and YouTube channel. So welcome, Barbara. Great to see you again.
Thank you, Brian. I'm very pleased to be with you.
Yeah, and you're in San Diego, right?
Yes.
Very good. Yeah, so tell us about your new book. It's just a few months old. I think it's released in November.
Well, yes, I'm very pleased with this book. This is my fifth book, actually,
Very good.
that I have written and co-authored. Anyway, I've collaborated with Sheila Seppi, who is a walk-in, and so she knows all about that. And Sheila is also very interested in the star seeds, people among us, and the hybrid, ET human hybrid people among us. And these have been great interests of mine as well, because over the years, I've had many clients who've come for regressions, wanting to know more about who they really are. And many of these people realize that they are very much like the rest of us human beings in many ways. And also they're very significantly different in a number of different ways, but they are living here on Earth with us. So it turns out through all the work that I've done, regressing so many people, probably 5,000 regressions at least, to people's extraterrestrial encounters that they have had. And it turns out that many of the beings out there, the extraterrestrial beings, are really very benevolent. We don't tend to hear that, I think, in the public media. I think there's more emphasis in the public of extraterrestrials being kind of scary or threatening or maybe dangerous for us. And there may be some like that. But most of the people who have come to me, when we get right into one of their experiences in the regression, it turns out that many of the beings are just sort of neutral. In other words, they're not bad, they're not threatening, they're not scary, but they're definitely different looking. And it takes a while sometimes for a person to get comfortable and accepting of those beings because they look so different. They're different sizes, different heights, different skin color, different skin type in many cases. And some of them are extremely different looking, like the tall mantis beings, whom some people describe as like a big insect, a big praying mantis insect. And they might be a little put off by seeing one of those beings with them. But it turns out, as we look into it further, that the mantis beings are often very kindly, caring, even benevolent. And in many situations, they seem to be the being in charge when a person has been taken onto a spacecraft, and particularly when the person might be on a cold, hard medical table being examined by other beings.
Yeah, I've got a picture here. I can just share a screen. This is the mantid here.
Oh, good, wonderful
Remember in
picture.
the email you said it closely resembles what some of your clients have described, right?
Yes. And that's really great that it's showing the increased height that the mantis beings have compared to that other being. And that's very, very typical. So in many of the scenarios that come up in the regressions, the mantis being might be near an examining table, but not participating in the examining of the person, but just sort of overseeing and perhaps in some cases guiding what the shorter beings are doing with the person. And mantis beings have been known to do many different kinds of things with people. Very often they function as guides, and in some cases they'll take the person way out in space for a number of other kinds of experiences rather than being on a UFO. And there's another thing I'd like to bring forward about the mantis beings, which is absolutely intriguing for me. And that is that it's happened again and again and again with people I have done regressions with, that after a regression, when they were encountered by a mantis being, one way or the other, and become quite aware of a mantis being, or even more than one, that it will happen that in their life, right after that, they will start seeing praying mantis insects, the little 4 feet
Yeah.
tall insects that frequent our gardens. And before having, shall we say, met the mantis being in a regression to an experience they had previously had, before they were really aware of mantis beings personally, they never had praying mantis insects in their gardens. But right after finding out about mantis beings having something to do with them, then right here on Earth, they see a praying mantis being right there. Uh, for instance, even two friends whom I had a whole evening of talking with at their home about extraterrestrial experiences, and they were very open to listening to this. And among other beings, we talked about the mantis beings, and they were quite fascinated with that and asked questions about the mantis beings. And then the very next morning, after we had had those conversations, those two women were sitting in their kitchen at the breakfast table, right in the corner of the kitchen where there were windows on both sides of the corner. And one of them looked over and said, "Oh, look, right next to you outside the window right there, there's a praying mantis insect looking right in at us."
Wow. So there
So
must be a connection with the mantids to the insect.
that was the first of those instances that I knew about. However, after that, when I regressed anybody else to an experience with a mantis being in the regression, that is to an experience that they had previously had and not had been aware of. But after that regression, maybe the next day or so, suddenly they would see a mantis being. Like one woman, for instance, was going out her front door and turned around to close the door from the outside, and there was a praying mantis insect right there on the door handle, looking right at her.
So how do you explain that? What do you think the connection is with the ET mantids and these little mantids, and like why the next day when they're thinking about it? What's your theory about the causation there?
Well, I think because it's happened to so many people that after finding out about mantis beings and that they've had some contact with them, and then the next day or so, they will see mantis beings on the car door handle or on the doorstep or on the top of the car or on the windshield. In other words, right in a prominent place where the person will be sure to see it. And that insect is always looking right at them. So, to get back to your question, I think there's definitely a connection between the big, tall mantis beings out in space and the small insect beings, which we call praying mantises, here on Earth. It's kind of like the insects here are like a representative of the big ones out in space. It seems. I really feel there is a connection because um, it's sort of like the mantis beings in space want to reinforce the idea to the person that he or she is actually having some sort of experiences with the big ones out in
Yeah.
space.
Yeah.
I mean, it just happens too many times.
So I've seen them as a kid in Ontario. I live in Vancouver. I've never seen them here, but I guess my question is, where are they indigenous? They're not all over the United States and Canada. And I guess in some countries they're not indigenous, right?
You know, I don't really know about that, but we certainly do have them here. Oh, and then I want to share with you something that really meant a lot to me. This was several years ago, probably about 10 years ago, um, in a home that I lived with uh, that had a big patio and a big tree in the middle of the patio. One day I was sitting out there, lovely sunny day, talking on my cell phone with a good friend who lived up in Washington State. And we were talking about different kinds of beings. That friend was very interested in his space friends, as he called them. And we got talking about the mantis beings. And I would guess that I talked for 20 minutes or so on the cell phone about mantis beings. And I was aware as I was doing that, that I was becoming more and more enthused about the mantis beings and recognized that I was so happy being able to talk at length about the mantis beings to this friend on the phone. And he was nice and interested, so that kept me going. And then suddenly I looked down at my own lap and I had black slacks on. And right there on my thigh was a baby mantis, praying mantis baby.
How did it get there? Were you inside the house?
No, I was out in my
Oh,
patio
it's amazing.
on near a big tree that was in the middle. But anyway, I had been very involved in my gardening in that backyard before that, and I had never ever seen a praying mantis insect. But because I was talking and so enthusiastically about the praying mantis beings, there suddenly on my own leg was this little baby praying mantis insect. And it was light green, and even the big eyes that they have were light green. And it was just sort of lying there on my thigh, just so sweet and innocent. And I immediately took my cell phone and took pictures of it because I didn't know how long it would stay there. And then after just a couple more minutes or so, I looked down on my thigh and it was gone. And I didn't see it on the patio floor or anything. But so I feel that there is a connection.
I wonder if that's part of gradual disclosure. Like my theory is the ETs want to do it gradually. So it's like give you a little hint. It's not too overt. It's a mantis on your leg. The gradual disclosure.
I think so. It's kind of reinforcing to the person who experiences this sort of thing, and to me, reinforcing that they really do exist.
It's
And
also an indication they're not trying to be totally secret, totally hide behind the scenes. They're trying to give little hints like that.
yeah, yeah. And it's always very striking for the people who experience them, after having had a regression in which a praying mantis being was prominent in that experience. So there's a lot that goes on, I think, between at least some of those extraterrestrial beings and us here on Earth. And yes, definitely some of them do want us to know about them. Some of them are probably more clandestine. They wouldn't be emphasizing or knowing about them. But the mantis beings seem to do that. Okay, so after many, many, many regressions, a couple of thousand or so, I started being aware that some of my clients were walk-ins. Now, a walk-in is something I had heard of through a past life therapy colleague who had been working with someone. And that woman, the patient, had been allergic to just about everything here on Earth, almost all kinds of food and plants and air and just about everything. And they were trying to get to the bottom of this, to the source of why she was allergic to so much. And it came out eventually through regressions that those two people did, that the patient was a walk-in, having come in from another realm. That brought my attention to the fact that there is such a thing as walk-ins. This was in 1990 that I found out about that from this colleague. Well, a walk-in is a soul who might be in the spiritual realm or might be in the extraterrestrial realm. And that soul really wants to come and help on Earth, knows that humanity needs a lot of help in various ways. And so instead of that soul choosing to incarnate into a newborn baby and have to go through all the years of infancy, babyhood, toddlerhood, childhood, teenagers, and so forth until becoming mature enough to really be of help to people, that soul has decided to find the soul of somebody living here already who doesn't want to be here anymore. So usually those people who get walked in upon, shall we say, might be in their 30s or 40s or 50s, usually not older. In other words, they still have enough years left of life, enough decades for it to be worthwhile for the walk-in to do an exchange with that person, a soul exchange. So the two souls get together. The person here probably is not aware of this, but the two souls get together and decide to do an exchange, that the soul of the person who really has just had it, doesn't want to be here anymore, will be leaving at the very same time and appointed, agreed upon time, when the incoming soul from a different realm will come in to that body and take up life in that body. Now, the outgoing soul is perfectly fine, and I want to emphasize that this is mutually agreed upon. It really serves the leaving one just as well as the incoming soul.
Yeah, so it's not abusive. It's not like invasion of the body snatchers. It's not these evil aliens taking over.
No, no. In fact, it's totally agreed upon. It's totally benevolent. And you will see that as I talk further about it. So the outgoing soul, leaving the body, goes right into the spirit realm that we all go into when we die. And so that soul is just perfectly fine, is welcomed and greeted and helped to adjust to that realm and lives there until whenever that soul would like to incarnate again. And the incoming soul, the walk-in, takes up residence in that body and takes on the life of that body. In other words, if that body that they have entered into is married, then that will be automatically the spouse of the walk-in soul. And if there are children with the original woman, those become the children of the walk-in, and the original family of that person, the whole life of that person becomes the life of the walk-in person. So it takes a while to adjust for the walk-in to be here. And it certainly takes a while for the families and friends and acquaintances of that original person, because the walk-in personality is so different. And it speaks differently, has different interests, and there are really enormous personality changes in most cases. And so that's very baffling for the children or the spouses or the original families and friends of that original person. But they do adjust. And one of the things that very often the walk-in needs to take care of is the physical problems that the original person has had. Sometimes they're pretty severe problems and multiple problems. But the walk-ins coming in with a whole different consciousness and different knowledge, they very often find that they can heal those problems relatively quickly and then go on to adjust to being here and to getting on with the service that they came to give. So these walk-ins have very different interests than the original person, and they are much more high-minded, much more spiritually oriented, more consciously oriented, and their work that they come to do has completely to do with raising the consciousness of people and healing people, guiding people, helping people to increase their own spirituality. And one of the reasons they come in too is to educate people about the existence of the extraterrestrial beings and the other dimensional beings, the
But I
high.
have a question about that. Like, would they have the memories of the previous person who left? Like,
Oh,
how would they know all the names of their friends and the family, their history together, what they did in high school? Like, would they know all that stuff?
oh, good question. Yes, they do know that because they're living in that person with the brain and the memories of that person. So the walk-in, the ones I have known, they have said, yes, I remember all the years earlier in the childhood incidents and so forth, but I don't have emotion attached to them. So that very often they will be with other people who had earlier experiences in life with the original person, and they'll mention a certain incident, and the walk-in remembers it. So the one mentioning it might have quite a bit of emotion attached to whatever that incident was, and the walk-in doesn't, but they do remember it. At least they can talk about it.
Well, I guess I'm trying to figure out the process there. If the soul of the other person left, I'm wondering if this is like a kind of ET tech where they download that person's memories. Of course, that person leaves, they go on to the soul realm or whatever, get rebirth, but they somehow take the memories and incorporate it into that life. Or what if it's some kind of ET technology like that?
Well, it seems to be from how people have described it, who've experienced it, that it's just there in the brain, in the memory of the original person. And
Okay, so the physical brain might have that, even if their consciousness is left.
yes, 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 exactly. And I mean, I think that's really uh, quite fortunate that those memories are there so that they can relate to people in their lives, who used to share those
Yeah.
incidents. And then they don't seem too awfully weird. So the walk-in goes on to live the life right here with other people. And if there are children, they go ahead and raise the children. Or if there are families to take care of older people in the families, they lovingly help take care of those elderly
They're
people.
probably more positive people. Like if the last person wanted to leave, like if they're suicidal wanted to leave, the new one's probably more purposeful, more positive, more energetic, probably a better person, a more cheerful person.
Oh, oh, yes, absolutely. That's so true of the ones I know. So anyway, they go on and completely relate to the family. And in the case of Sheila Seppi, who co-authored this book with me, Cosmic Convergence, or I should say I co-authored it with her. She initiated it. Um, she came in and the original person whom she entered into had 3 young children and a husband. And so she had the task suddenly of not only being here on Earth as a person, but raising these children. And the children very soon got to be delighted. Now, what they were aware of is that their mom had just completely changed. She looked the same,
Better
exactly.
mom, happier mom.
But this mom, this version of mom, was so peppy and energetic and uh, did all kinds of fun, active things with the kids, whereas the original mom had enough physical difficulties going on that she, oh, rarely took them out to play and couldn't get down on the floor with them and play. But the new one, the walk-in, could do all those things and had, because she was really feeling good, having healed all those original afflictions. So that was wonderful, and they developed a lot of closeness. And those kids are all grown up now, and some of them, or one of them in particular, works with her in their healing clinic. So walk-ins are here for a number of different purposes, uh, basically to help people and help all of humanity if they can. So they do a lot of healing work and counseling work, consulting work, guidance work, inspirational work with people. And they do a lot of this quite publicly as well. In other words, they give podcasts and lectures and conferences, and they bring together all kinds of other people who are very high-minded, spiritually oriented people. And so they're not the only spokesperson for all of that, but very often they gather other people. So anyway, they were just living a whole life of service. One thing that usually happens, at least it has with all the walk-ins whom I personally know, um, that the original marriage between the original person and that spouse, those marriages usually don't have a chance of lasting.
Yeah, because it's a totally different spouse, a different person, right?
It is, who may look exactly the same, but and even sound the same. Like if the original person had a Southern accent, for instance, uh, the walk-in adapts or inherits, shall we say, that Southern accent. So the person may look and sound the same, but they don't act the same. And what they're talking about isn't the same. And so the husbands of the original person, or wife, if it's a male walk-in, uh, you know, they find that this person has just changed so much that it just doesn't seem like it's the same person. And basically it isn't.
It's not the same person.
Yeah, the same body, same life, but not really the same person, not the same soul. So those marriages usually end at various lengths of time, and the walk-in person might or might not marry somebody who's more on the wavelength that he or she is. That happens. Sometimes they never do remarry, but they go about their life of service in either case. So they do all kinds of things to help individuals and to help large groups of people. One of the things that they do very often is acquaint people with the fact that there are very conscious, aware, other dimensional beings. And those other dimensional beings sometimes visit some human beings, just like the extraterrestrial beings do. So they're kind of a liaison between other dimensions and the extraterrestrial dimension. So they're full of educating, opening up doors, opening up consciousness, and I think really giving a wonderful service. I think,
Yes, my question is, who were they prior to that? Were they ETs, or were they like Devas, angels, and all kinds of different walk-ins? Like, do
yep,
they have higher knowledge, like, and things like that?
yes, well, some of them come from a more spiritual realm, an angelic realm, other dimensional realm. Some of them come from a more physical extraterrestrial realm. And it doesn't really matter because um, they bring so much insight, so much knowledge from whatever realm they have come from.
Do they remember like their previous existence or previous life and have memories of that?
Yes, the people I know who are walk-ins do. Uh, I mean, some of them know, for instance, that they come from the Andromedan race or the Arcturian race or the Pleiadian race, usually one of those species out there in space that are more
Oh,
human-like
oh.
than many of the other races. I'm not sure that that would be totally true of every walk-in, but it seems to be true of the ones whom I have come to know.
Do you have an idea of how many in the world? How many walk-ins are there?
You know, I won't even hesitate to guess. I personally know of about 10 of them and have learned a great deal from each one of them. Uh, but so that's a very small number compared to the ET experiencers whom I know. But I think that it's fair to assume that there are walk-ins all over the world, and probably not big numbers of them, but that those walk-ins are significant here.
Yeah, they
They,
make a contribution. I guess the ETs can choose if they need to bring in more walk-ins. They can probably find more volunteers to switch if they need to do that. It's another
yeah,
as a way to facilitate humanity's development.
right. Good point. I think that that's probably true. So anyway, it's a completely good, benevolent thing. One thing I have become very aware of in my work with these other beings and other people is that so many of them, the beings, would really like to be able to be helpful to humanity. And many are very concerned about planet Earth, would like to help planet Earth and help stop all the pollution and so forth ruining of the earth that is going on, and saving species. I mean, a lot of the beings out there are very, very aware of what's going on here on Earth and would like to help, but they cannot actually come here and live here themselves because they would not be able to withstand our bacteria, viruses, parasites, density. They wouldn't be able to digest our food. And there are many other factors too that they would not be able to tolerate if they tried to live here. And you might remember that with people's encounters with these beings, the encounter always seems to start here on Earth, and that those beings do not show up for very long at all, uh, because they cannot be here for very long.
Yeah,
So,
you mean like an abduction encounters, just a few minutes, they take them and go, that kind of thing.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even if it's a situation where the person is driving along and will see a craft, a light in the sky, often coming closer, and the car motor seems to be petering out, and the person will drive the car off the road, hopefully, for safety, thinking the motor is dying. And then the lighted craft comes closer and closer, and beings come out and take the person for an hour or two, typically. And the person may be consciously aware of those first few moments or not. But it seems like in all the reports I've heard, that, oh, good picture, lovely picture. That's
That's
just
an advantage of a Zoom account, right? It can switch pictures just like that.
great. Yes, well,
Surprise.
that's a perfect picture because that's just what so many people describe when their car motor has been coming to a stop and they pull off the road and the light gets brighter and brighter outside coming toward the car. And that's just what many, many people describe, that there are two, sometimes more, beings that come to the car and take them. Now, consciously, they don't seem to remember all of that. But in the regression, when we go back to one of those experiences, this is exactly what the beings seem to look like, and the whole thing with a bright, bright light shining, and they're coming toward the car, and they take the person, and they do it very quickly. One of the reasons might be, I would think, that the beings can't withstand our density, our environment, so they take the person onto the craft where the beings function perfectly well, and out into a bigger craft often, or sometimes even into a different planet where they can function. And I've had a number of people taken to other planets in some of their regressions. And in each case, the planet is such that the person taken can actually breathe and function there. In fact, sometimes they're taken into a very watery planet with some land, but maybe primarily water. And they're taken into the water. And although we can't do that here, on those kinds of planets, the person can seem to breathe in the water, like in one of their oceans, for a while. And then they function, they kind of get washed back up on to the land and breathe the air. But anyway, there's a lot of going on that we're not consciously aware of between us and them.